My name is Claire Thompson, 33 years old and the forgotten middle child of the Thompson software dynasty. Arriving at our Boston mansion for Thanksgiving, I noticed Dad checking his phone, obsessively whispering to Mom with unusual excitement. Little did they know, beneath my simple black dress beat the heart of someone they had drastically underestimated. The bombshell Dad was about to drop at dinner would change our family forever, but not in the way he expected. If you are watching this from a family business situation, drop a comment below and subscribe to see how I turned my father's betrayal into the sweetest revenge that changed our family forever. I grew up in Brooklyn, one of Boston's wealthiest suburbs, in a sprawling colonial with 6 bedrooms, a heated indoor pool, and a lawn that required 3 gardeners to maintain. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American success story. My grandfather, William Thompson, started Thompson Tech Solutions in his garage back in 1978 with nothing but a second-hand computer and a revolutionary idea for inventory management software. He built it from nothing into a regional powerhouse before my father, Richard Thompson, took over in 1995. Dad expanded the company aggressively. Under his leadership, Thompson Tech grew from a $10 million family business to a $50 million enterprise with over 200 employees and clients across the country. Every holiday dinner, every family vacation, every weekend barbecue inevitably turned into a celebration of his business genius. The Thompson name became synonymous with success in Boston business circles, and Dad never let anyone forget it, especially his children. There were 3 of us Thompson kids. My older brother, Evan, 39, was the golden child, despite never showing any real aptitude for the business. He majored in communications, partied through college, and still, Dad handed him a vice president position the day after graduation. Evan spent more time on his boat or with his rotating cast of girlfriends than in the office, but somehow Dad remained convinced he was the natural heir to the Thompson throne. Then there was me, Claire, perpetually stuck in the middle at 33. Unlike my siblings, I inherited my grandfather's passion for technology. I taught myself coding at 12 and built my first app at 15. I studied computer science and business at MIT, graduated summa cum laude, and had legitimate, innovative ideas for modernizing the company. Yet somehow, Dad always looked right through me during business discussions, as if I were invisible. My younger sister Sophie, 30, rounded out our trio. She leveraged our family name to become a lifestyle influence with hundreds of thousands of followers who loved her perfectly curated glimpses into old money New England living. She had zero interest in software or business operations, but never missed an opportunity to post about being a Thompson Tech heiress while contributing nothing to the company's success. Mom, Eleanor, came from old Boston money and approached family conflict the way all proper Beacon Hill wives did, by ignoring it completely and pouring another glass of Chardonnay. She played peacekeeper, but ultimately enabled Dad's worst behaviors, especially his dismissal of my business acumen. Richard, maybe you should listen to Claire's idea, she would occasionally suggest at dinner, only to immediately back down when Dad shot her that look. Eleanor, please. This is actual business we are discussing, he would say before turning back to Evan to continue their conversation. Family gatherings always centered around business talk that somehow excluded me. Dad and Evan would dominate conversations with industry jargon and inside jokes while I sat silently, despite understanding the technology and market better than either of them. If I tried to contribute, Dad would smile condescendingly and say something like, "That is sweet, Claire," but leave the business discussions to the people who understand the real world. The breaking point came when I was 23. Fresh out of MIT with honors, I had developed a cloud-based integration solution that could have revolutionized our product line years before competitors entered that space. I spent months preparing a comprehensive business plan, market analysis, and technical specifications. Dad finally agreed to let me pitch during a board meeting, supposedly as a professional courtesy.
I still remember walking into that mahogany-paneled boardroom, laptop and presentation materials in hand, heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. The board members, all men in their 50s and 60s who had been Dad's friends for decades, watched with polite but distant expressions. 10 minutes into my presentation, Dad checked his watch, sighed loudly, and raised his hand to stop me mid-sentence. "I think we have seen enough," he said with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. "Claire, sweetheart, this is all very creative, but completely impractical for a serious enterprise like ours. Our clients want stability, not experimental technologies." He turned to the board members with an apologetic shrug. "My daughter recently graduated college and is full of these academic ideas. Now, shall we move on to actual business matters?" The humiliation burned through me as I packed up my materials while they chuckled and moved on as if I had never been there. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would leave Boston and the family business behind. I would build something of my own, something so successful that even my father could not dismiss it. I moved to San Francisco with $5,000 in savings and nothing else. My parents assumed it was just a phase, a tantrum. "She will be back when she runs out of money," I overheard Dad telling Mom on the phone during one of our increasingly rare calls. Those early years were brutal. My tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood cost nearly my entire monthly budget. I survived on ramen noodles and coffee, working 80-hour weeks, first at entry-level coding jobs, then as a freelance developer. Every dollar I could save went into building my own company.
I created Summit Dynamics under the pseudonym C.E. Vance. The initials stood for Claire Elizabeth, but nobody knew that. I wanted my success or failure to be completely disconnected from the Thomson name. I started small, developing custom enterprise solutions for startups, reinvesting every profit. By year 3, I had 10 employees and a real office in Soma.
The breakthrough came when I developed a proprietary integration platform that allowed legacy systems to communicate seamlessly with modern cloud services, ironically similar to what I had pitched to my father years earlier. Venture capital came calling, but I maintained majority ownership, determined to control my destiny. Over the next 7 years, I strategically acquired smaller tech companies that complemented our services. Summit Dynamics grew to a $200 million valuation with offices in 3 cities. Throughout it all, I maintained my pseudonym in all business dealings. In the tech world, C.E. Vance was known as a brilliant, reclusive founder who rarely gave interviews or appeared at industry events. When I absolutely had to make public appearances, I used subtle changes to my appearance and let my COO do most of the talking. My family remained completely unaware of my success. During holiday calls and occasional visits, I kept conversations vague, describing my work as doing okay or still figuring things out. Dad never pressed for details, as he had already written off my career as inconsequential. This suited me perfectly, as I built Summit into something that would one day shock them all. The week before Thanksgiving, I was in my corner office overlooking San Francisco Bay, finalizing the paperwork for the most important deal of my life. My assistant knocked and entered with my travel itinerary. "Your private jet is confirmed for Tuesday at 11 a.m., she said. "Are you sure you do not want to bring your executive team to Boston for the signing?" I shook my head. "This is personal. I need to handle it alone." After she left, my phone rang. It was Olivia, my best friend since those early struggling days. "Are you really going through with this family Thanksgiving charade?" she asked without preamble. "After everything they did? After 2 years of barely speaking to them?" I sighed, spinning in my chair to face the window. "I have to be there in person when it happens, Liv. I need to see his face." "I remember the last Christmas disaster," she said carefully. "Your father announced Evan's promotion to executive vice president while you sat there with your unacknowledged Series B funding round. You came back to California and did not speak to them for months. The memory stung. Dad had raised a toast to the future of Thompson Tech while looking directly at my brother, who had been too hungover to contribute anything meaningful. This time will be different, I promised. Everything changes this Thanksgiving. I spent the evening packing, deliberately choosing my wardrobe to make a statement. Gone were the casual clothes my family associated with me. Instead, I packed Armani suits, a Chanel dress for Thanksgiving dinner, subroutine heels, and the subtle signifiers of success, a Patek Philippe watch, a Gavotte Veneta handbag, and small diamond earrings from Tiffany. After years of deliberately downplaying my success, I wanted them to see glimpses of it before the final revelation. Tuesday morning, I boarded the private jet I rarely used. During the 5-hour flight, I reviewed the contract once more, ensuring every detail was perfect. The jet landed at a private airfield outside Boston, where a black Bentley waited on the tarmac, another unusual indulgence arranged for this trip. As we drove through familiar neighborhoods toward Brooklyn, I felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and determination hardening within me. The Thompson family estate looked exactly as it always had. Imposing colonial architecture, perfectly manicured grounds, and a wreath already on the door. I instructed the driver to wait and took a deep breath before walking up the steps. Mom answered the door herself, her eyes widening slightly as she took in my appearance. "Claire, darling," she said, embracing me. "You look different. Is that a Rolex?" "Patek Philippe, actually," I said. "Good to see you, Mom." She ushered me inside, chattering about Thanksgiving preparations. "Your father is in his study," Mom said. "He has been very busy with some big deal. Very hush-hush." I smiled. "I will say hello before I settle in." Dad's study was a sanctuary of leather and mahogany. I knocked once and entered without waiting for a response. He looked up, surprised, before settling into his usual mild disinterest. "Claire, you made it." He stood for a brief, awkward hug. "The trip from California was good, very smooth," I said deliberately. "I flew private. Saves time." A momentary confusion crossed his features. "Private? That must have been expensive." I shrugged. "Business is good." Before he could inquire further, his phone rang. As he took the call, I glanced at his desk. There it was, the Summit Dynamics acquisition proposal. My heart raced, but I maintained my composure. "Sorry about that," he said hastily, gathering the papers. "Big things happening at the company. You would not understand." The familiar dismissal rolled off me like water now. "Of course, Dad. I will let you get back to it." I headed upstairs to my old bedroom, a shrine to my teenage self, with debate trophies and MIT pennants still adorning the walls. After freshening up, I found Evan in the living room, already drinking scotch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. "Well, well, the prodigal sister returns," he said, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Still playing with computers in California?" "Something like that," I replied with a tight smile. "How is your little startup doing?" "Making any money yet?" His condescension was so familiar it almost felt like home. Before I could answer, Sophie burst into the room, phone held at the perfect angle for her Instagram followers. "Claire is here, everyone. Family reunion time," she announced before air kissing my cheeks. "You look expensive, sis. Did you finally find yourself a rich boyfriend?" "No, just working hard," I said, stepping out of her camera frame. Evan's new girlfriend, a willowy blonde named Jessica, entered the room. "Jessica, this is my sister Claire," Evan said with a vague wave that dismissed a decade of my professional accomplishments. "She lives in San Francisco and does tech stuff." "Oh my God, I love San Francisco," Jessica gushed. "The shopping is amazing." Our awkward small talk was interrupted by the sound of Dad's raised voice from his study. "Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow after Thanksgiving, $50 million is the final offer. Summit Dynamics has been very insistent on the terms. I excused myself to the kitchen, where Rosa, our housekeeper of 20 years, was preparing vegetables. Miss Claire, she smiled warmly. It is good to see you. You look well. Your mother wants everything perfect for tomorrow, she added. Big day, she says. Your father has news. I nodded, wondering if the entire household staff knew about the sale before his own children did. So, I gathered. The pre-dinner drinks hour was excruciating. Mom fluttered about with forced cheerfulness. Dad checked his phone every 3 minutes. Evan bragged about his new boat, and Sophie documented everything. I sipped my wine slowly, observing the family dynamics with new eyes. No longer the hurt daughter seeking validation, but a successful businesswoman about to change the game entirely. Dinner is ready, Mom finally announced. I took a deep breath and followed them, knowing that by the time dessert was served, nothing would ever be the same. What they did not know was that for the past year, I had been strategically acquiring shares in companies that were key suppliers and clients of Thompson Tech. I studied their quarterly reports, identified their weaknesses, and positioned Summit as the perfect buyer to take Thompson Tech to the next level. 6 months ago, I had my CFO send an anonymous acquisition offer through a third party, which my father predictably rejected without proper consideration. Now, 10 years after being humiliated in that boardroom, I was returning home for Thanksgiving with a plan that would change everything. Thompson Tech was struggling with outdated technology and losing market share. My father did not know it yet, but I was about to become his worst nightmare and his only salvation. The Thompson family Thanksgiving dinner was a formal affair, with the massive mahogany table set with Wedgwood china and sterling silver candelabras. I noted with mild amusement that I had been seated at the far end of the table, as far from Dad as physically possible. Evan sat at Dad's right hand with Jessica, while Sophie occupied the spot to Dad's left. Mom and I were at the opposite end, symbolically separated from the inner circle. Rosa and the kitchen staff served course after course, culminating in a 25-pound turkey, Dad carved with ceremonial precision while Sophie filmed. And here is Daddy carving the turkey, just like his father before him, continuing the Thompson family tradition of excellence. Dad frowned slightly, but moved on to his own speech about his business legacy. Throughout the meal, he seemed distracted, checking his phone under the table. As Rosa brought in the pies, Dad tapped his knife against his crystal water glass. I have an announcement to make, he said, standing at the head of the table. The table fell silent. As you know, I have dedicated my life to building Thompson Tech, but the time has come for change. I have decided to sell the company. Evan choked on his wine. What? Dad, you cannot be serious. Dad raised a hand for silence. I have been in negotiations for months. The deal will be finalized tomorrow. Sophie gasped. But Daddy, what about the Thompson legacy? My brand is built around being a Thompson Tech heiress. That brings me to the second part, Dad continued. The proceeds from the sale will not be going to you children as inheritance. Now both Evan and Sophie erupted. That is our birthright. Evan slammed his fist on the table. Where is the money going? Sophie wailed, now live streaming the drama to her followers. Your mother and I will be using part of it for our retirement, Dad said. The rest will go to establishing the Thompson Foundation, a charitable organization to support technology education. Throughout the chaos, I remained perfectly still, taking small bites of pecan pie. Mom noticed my calm. Claire, she said quietly, you do not seem surprised. The table gradually quieted as everyone turned toward me. Actually, I said, setting down my dessert fork, I have just one question. I looked directly at my father. Who is the buyer? Dad's chest puffed with pride. A very successful tech investment firm called Summit Dynamics. They are paying $50 million, which is more than generous given our recent market challenges. I took a sip of water, steadying myself. The moment was suspended between the past and future. Dad, I said finally, my voice calm and clear, I am Summit Dynamics. The room went completely silent. I could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I watched the emotions play across my father's face: confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, the first flickers of anger. Evan was the first to react, knocking over his wine glass as he stood abruptly. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded. Sophie, incredibly, was still live streaming, her hands shaking. "Oh my God," she whispered to her phone. "Did my sister just say she owns Summit Dynamics?" I stood slowly, feeling a strange sense of calm. "C.E. Vance," I said. "Claire Elizabeth Vance. That is the name I've been using professionally for the past decade while building Summit Dynamics into a $200 million company." Dad found his voice at last. "This is preposterous," he sputtered. "Summit Dynamics is run by C.E. Vance, a respected technology investor, not by my daughter who has been playing at startups in California." I reached into my purse and slid a business card across the table toward him. "Actually, Dad, I am C.E. Vance. I founded Summit Dynamics 10 years ago after you dismissed my business proposal and humiliated me in front of your board." Dad snatched up the card, his voice losing its certainty. "This is some kind of joke. Summit Dynamics now owns controlling interests in Apex Technologies, Velocity Data Solutions, and Cortec Industries," I continued, naming Thompson Tech's three largest suppliers. "We also recently acquired majority stakes in your two biggest clients, Sterling Manufacturing and Crestwood Distribution. The Thompson Tech acquisition is the final piece in a strategic plan I have been implementing for the past 18 months. "You have been spying on our business," Evan accused, his face mottled with rage. "No, Evan. It is called market research. Everything I learned about Thompson Tech came from publicly available financial reports and completely legal channels." I turned back to Dad. "The truth is, Thompson Tech has been failing for years. Your technology is outdated, your management practices are from the last century, and you have lost 22% market share in the past 3 years." "How dare you?" Dad began, but I cut him off. "I tried to help you first. 6 months ago, Summit Dynamics sent an anonymous partnership proposal, the Phoenix proposal. You rejected it without even reading past the first page." "So this whole time you have been plotting against your own family," Evan shouted, "planning to steal our company." "Not steal, Evan. Purchase legally for $50 million, which is honestly more than its current market value. And let us be clear, this company stopped being our family business the day Dad made it evident that only one child would ever have a meaningful role in it." Sophie finally lowered her phone. "So, you are going to be our boss now?" she asked in a small voice. "Technically, yes," I confirmed, "though the current management structure will be completely reorganized." Once our plates were filled, Dad raised his glass for the traditional gratitude ritual, which had devolved into a competitive status report. Evan went first. "I am thankful for another record-breaking quarter at Thompson Tech," he began, though I knew the company had actually lost market share for the third consecutive quarter. "And for my new 42-foot yacht, the Thompson Legacy, and for new beginnings with this amazing woman." Sophie went next, phone still in hand. "I am so thankful to have reached 1 million followers this year, and I am grateful to be a Thompson and represent our family brand to the world." When my turn came, I spoke clearly. "I am thankful for the lessons life has taught me, that sometimes rejection leads to the right path, that persistence matters more than privilege, and that success is the best teacher." I raised my glass. "To finding your own way." Dad stood abruptly. "This deal is off. I will not sell my company to my own daughter as some kind of revenge plot." I shook my head slowly. "The contracts are signed, Dad. The board has approved the sale. The press release goes out tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Legally, Summit Dynamics already owns Thompson Tech." I will fight this, he threatened, though the uncertainty in his eyes told me he knew I had outmaneuvered him. Your lawyers have already vetted the deal extensively, I interrupted gently. They advised you it was the best offer you would get. What exactly will you tell them now? That you are upset because the brilliant CEO you have been negotiating with turns out to be your daughter. Mom spoke for the first time since my revelation, her words slightly slurred, but her gaze surprisingly clear. All these years, Claire, all these years you were building this while you thought I was failing, I finished for her. Yes, exactly. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You have a choice to make right now, Claire. You can be my daughter, or you can be the person who took my company. You cannot be both. The ultimatum hung in the air, so predictable it almost made me sad. 10 years ago, it would have devastated me. Now it merely confirmed what I had always known. That is where you are wrong, Dad, I said quietly. I am both. I always have been. You just refuse to see it. Sophie had started crying in earnest. What happens to us? To our trust funds? Our positions? That depends, I answered honestly, on whether you want to actually work for the company or just claim its benefits. Evan pointed an accusing finger at me. You planned this for Thanksgiving deliberately, did not you? To humiliate us? I planned it for Thanksgiving because I knew everyone would be here, I corrected him. And because 10 years ago at Thanksgiving dinner, Dad announced that he was promoting you to vice president, despite your complete lack of qualifications, while telling me my degree from MIT was not enough to warrant even an entry-level management position. Dad's face flushed at the reminder. That was different. Evan is my son, my firstborn. And there it is, I said softly. The real reason I was never given a chance. Not my ideas, not my education, not my work ethic, just my gender. The painful truth silenced the room again. This conversation is over, Dad finally declared. Everyone out. I need to call my attorneys. He stormed from the dining room. Mom rose unsteadily. I should go check on him. She paused beside my chair. Are you really worth $200 million? I nodded. And all those times you could not come home for Christmas because you said you could not afford the plane ticket? I was running a company, Mom, and I needed you all to keep underestimating me. She touched my shoulder briefly, an unreadable expression on her face, then followed after Dad. As the dining room emptied, I remained seated, looking at the abandoned Thanksgiving feast. The turkey had grown cold, the candles burned low, and the family I had once desperately wanted to impress had scattered in shock and anger. It should have felt like victory. Instead, a hollow ache spread through my chest. I retreated to my childhood bedroom as the house descended into chaos below. Through the floor, I could hear Dad shouting on the phone, Evan's angry voice, and Sophie's dramatic wailing. A sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Evan, his face flushed. We need to talk, he said, pushing past me into the room. About what, Evan? How I ruined your Thanksgiving, or how you plan to inherit a company you helped run into the ground? You think you are so clever? He hissed. Did you enjoy lying to our faces all these years? About as much as you enjoyed taking credit for my ideas, I replied evenly. Remember when I suggested cloud-based solutions 6 years ago? Dad dismissed it, but 3 months later, you presented the exact same concept as your own. Evan stopped pacing. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who put in the time at the company while you ran off to California. You put in time, yes, but what did you actually contribute, Evan? Besides expenses on the company credit card for client dinners at strip clubs and a corner office you used for naps between hangovers. His face contorted with fury. You do not know what you are talking about. I brought in the Crestwood account. Crestwood came to Thompson Tech because I personally reached out to their CTO as C.E. Vance and recommended your services as part of my long-term acquisition strategy, I informed him. And I know exactly what I am talking about because I have been auditing the company remotely for the past year as part of my due diligence, including the financial records you thought were only accessible on the local server. The color drained from his face. What are you saying? I know about the $300,000 you embezzled through fake vendor accounts, Evan. I know about the phantom consulting fees that went directly to your personal offshore account. I know everything. He took a threatening step toward me. You cannot prove any of that. I have transaction records, account numbers, and IP logs showing the falsified entries came from your office computer on days when only you were present. I am not planning to pursue criminal charges, Evan. That would hurt the company during the transition, but do not test me. You, he whispered, hands clenching into fists. You would destroy your own brother. I would hold accountable a thief who happens to be related to me, I corrected him. There is a difference. He finally turned away. This is not over, he warned. Actually, it is, I said to his retreating back. You just do not realize it yet. I had barely closed the door when another knock came. This time it was Sophie, her makeup freshly touched up. So you are like a secret millionaire, she said, entering my room. That is actually kind of badass. I could not help but laugh. Is that what you were going with 5 minutes ago? You were crying about losing your heiress status. She shrugged, examining her manicure. I am adaptable. It is essential for influencer longevity. She looked up with sudden calculation. Just think of the content we could create together. My sister, the tech mogul, my followers would eat that up. Is that why you are here, Sophie? To propose a business collaboration? More like a mutual arrangement, she said. You need a media presence that humanizes you, and I need an authentic connection to actual business success. And what about actually working for the company, learning the business? She wrinkled her nose. God, no. Coding is boring. But I could be like the brand ambassador. The face of an enterprise software integration platform for the lifestyle market, I repeated slowly. Do you hear yourself? Sophie stood, straightening her shoulders. Fine, mock me like everyone else in this family, but my social media skills are actually valuable in today's market. I have built my own brand from nothing, just like you did. The parallel had never occurred to me, and I found myself momentarily speechless. I will think about it, I said finally, but not tonight. A gentle knock interrupted me again. Mom entered, looking surprisingly sober. Your father has locked himself in his study with a bottle of scotch and the company bylaws, she said, settling into the window seat. He is convinced there must be some loophole to stop the sale. There is not, I said simply. His lawyers already confirmed it. She nodded. You know, I kept everything exactly as you left it. I always thought you would come back once you got this rebellion out of your system. It was never a rebellion, Mom. It was a career, a life. 200 million, she mused. My little girl built a company worth $200 million in secret while we all thought you were struggling. I turned to face her fully. You could have asked, Mom. Any of you could have shown genuine interest in what I was doing. But none of you ever really wanted to know. Tears welled in her eyes. I knew, Claire. Not the details, not the scale of your success, but I knew you were special. I just did not know how to help you in a family like ours, with a man like your father. You could have stood up for me, I said, the old hurt rising unexpectedly. All those times he dismissed me, humiliated me. You just sat there. I was wrong, she admitted quietly. I told myself I was keeping the peace, being a supportive wife. But I failed as a mother when you needed an advocate. The simple acknowledgement pierced something long frozen inside me. I had not prepared for genuine remorse. What happens now? Mom asked after a long silence. Tomorrow morning, the acquisition becomes public. Thompson Tech will become a subsidiary of Summit Dynamics. Dad and Evan will be offered advisory positions with no actual authority. And you? Will you move back to Boston? I shook my head. I will remain in San Francisco. We will install a new management team here. Your father may never forgive you for this, she warned softly. I know, I acknowledged. But this is not about forgiveness, Mom. It is about finally being seen. The kitchen was eerily quiet when I came down at 7 a.m. Rosa silently handed me a cup of coffee, her eyes communicating a mixture of concern and respect. Dad appeared in the doorway. He looked older than he had yesterday, his normally perfect posture slightly stooped. My study, now. His tone left no room for discussion. I followed him to the room that had always been the center of Thompson family power. I chose not to sit in the visitor's chair, instead perching on the edge of the desk itself, a subtle repositioning of our power dynamic that did not go unnoticed. My attorneys confirm what you said last night, he began without preamble. The sale is legally binding. Of course it was, I replied. Thompson Tech has been losing market share for 3 years. Your technology is outdated. Your management structure is bloated. The board recognized a good offer when they saw it. $50 million, he said, shaking his head. The company was valued at $70 million just 2 years ago. The company was overvalued 2 years ago, I corrected, and I offered more than any other potential buyer would have. Most would have stripped the assets and dissolved the Thompson name entirely. He looked up sharply. And is that your plan? To erase your own family legacy? Number. Despite everything, I respect what grandfather built. The Thompson name stays, though the company structure will change significantly. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his features. What exactly are your plans? I had waited 10 years for him to ask my opinion on business matters. The irony was not lost on me. Thompson Tech will become the enterprise division of Summit Dynamics, focusing on updating your legacy products and integrating them with our cloud platforms. We will retain approximately 60% of the current staff, with significant changes to upper management. And me? He asked, the question clearly costing him. You will be offered a position as chairman emeritus. No operational authority, but you will maintain an office and can advise on client relationships during the transition. His jaw tightened. A figurehead role. A respected advisory position, I countered, with full benefits and a generous compensation package. He stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. How did you do it? He finally asked, his voice quieter. Build something that valuable when you had nothing? No connections? No startup capital? I had my education, I reminded him. The one thing you could not take from me. And I had tremendous motivation to prove you wrong. He turned back to face me. I expected you to fail. I know. Everyone does, fail. I mean, 90% of startups never make it past the first 3 years. I thought, he hesitated. I thought I was protecting you from inevitable disappointment. By ensuring I never got the chance to try? I raised an eyebrow. That is not protection, Dad. That is control. At the mention of my brother, Dad's expression darkened. Evan may have his flaws, but he has been loyal to this company. Evan has been embezzling from the company for at least 3 years, I informed him bluntly. I have all the documentation. That is part of why I moved now, before he could do more damage. Dad sank back into his chair, the shock of this new revelation apparently too much to process while standing. That cannot be true. $300,000 siphoned through fake vendor accounts. The evidence is irrefutable. Why would he need to steal? He makes a generous salary, has a trust fund. Gambling debts, I said. Sports betting, mostly, from what I can tell. Dad buried his face in his hands. So both my son and my company were failing, and I was too blind to see either. The naked vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. Not blind, I said, softening my tone slightly. Just looking in the wrong direction. A long silence stretched between us. How did you do it? He asked again, his voice now filled with something approaching genuine curiosity. Really? No connections, no investors who knew the Thompson name. How did you build something so successful? I started small, I explained. Freelance development work to build capital. Then I created a proprietary integration platform. It was actually based on the proposal you dismissed when I was 23. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. The one with the middleware solution. I nodded. Yes. I refined it, used it to attract our first major clients, reinvested every profit, lived in a studio apartment eating ramen for 3 years to keep overhead low. Without the Thompson name to open doors, he mused. Because of that, in some ways, I corrected. Being underestimated is a powerful position if you know how to use it. No one saw me coming. He almost smiled at that. Clearly not. I checked my watch. The press release goes out in 45 minutes. We should discuss next steps. What about Evan and Sophie? He asked. Evan will be offered a choice. Resign quietly with a reasonable severance or face potential legal consequences for the embezzlement. Sophie actually made a compelling case last night for serving as a brand ambassador. Her social media skills are legitimately valuable. Dad looked genuinely surprised. You would keep them involved after everything? This was never about destroying the family, Dad. It was about claiming my place in it, on my terms. He nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to the papers on his desk, then rising to meet mine. You outmaneuvered me completely, he said, and I was startled to detect a note of something almost like pride in his voice. Your grandfather would have been impressed. Coming from him, it was as close to approval as I had ever received. I felt a complicated emotion rising in my chest, not quite vindication, not quite forgiveness, but something in between. I learned from watching you, I acknowledged, even when you did not think I was paying attention. He extended his hand across the desk. So, Chairman Emeritus. I took his hand. Welcome to Summit Dynamics, Dad. 6 months after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in the newly renovated headquarters of Thomson Summit Technologies. The former Thomson Tech building had been transformed with open workspace and state-of-the-art technology. My role as CEO of Summit Dynamics meant I split my time between San Francisco and Boston, overseeing the integration. The transition had not been easy, but it had been more successful than anticipated. Dad had surprised everyone by embracing his chairman emeritus role with unexpected grace. Once the initial shock subsided, he found satisfaction in mentoring younger team members. We established a weekly meeting, and for the first time, we were building a relationship based on mutual respect. Evan's situation was more complicated. He accepted a conditional offer, repayment of the stolen funds, resignation, and enrollment in an MBA program if he wanted any future role. To my surprise, he chose education over exile and was now halfway through his first semester, occasionally calling with genuine questions about business strategy. Sophie had flourished as brand ambassador for our consumer products division, a small but growing part of the business. Her followers were captivated by the dramatic family business saga, which she carefully presented as a story of female empowerment and family reconciliation. Mom had perhaps changed the most. Freed from her role as peacekeeper, she reduced her drinking, started volunteering with women's education initiatives, and even joined the board of a tech incubator for female founders. I want to help other girls like you, she told me, so their mothers do not make the same mistakes I did. As I walked through the office, employees greeted me respectfully. I was no longer C.E. Vance, the mysterious founder, nor Claire Thompson, the forgotten middle child. I was simply Claire, the CEO. My assistant interrupted my thoughts. Your father is waiting in the conference room with the quarterly reports, and your mother called to confirm dinner tonight with the potential investors. I headed toward the meeting, pausing by the newly installed company timeline in the main lobby. It displayed the evolution of Thomson Tech from my grandfather's garage startup to our current iteration. My photo now hung alongside those of my grandfather and father, 3 generations of leadership. Thanksgiving was approaching again, and this year would be entirely different. We had planned a smaller, more intimate family dinner without the performative traditions, just a family still learning how to truly see and hear each other. The journey from rejection to leadership had been long and painful. The hardest part was not the acquisition itself, but the ongoing work of building relationships that could withstand our shared history. Dad still occasionally slipped into his authoritarian approach, and I sometimes found myself unnecessarily defensive. Yet slowly, conversation by conversation, the Thompson family was creating a new dynamic. Perhaps the most profound moment had come unexpectedly during a late night at the office when Dad and I were reviewing the first quarter results after the merger. The numbers had exceeded all projections. "You know," he had said quietly, "you have already accomplished more than I did in my first decade running this company." The simple acknowledgement had healed something in me that I had not realized was still broken. The experience had taught me that success itself is not enough to heal family wounds. The satisfaction of proving myself had been sweet, but ultimately hollow until it led to genuine connection. I had needed to learn that there is a difference between winning and resolving, between being right and being whole. As I entered the conference room where Dad waited, I reflected on how complex the journey had been. The lesson I carried forward was not that success is the best revenge, but that success without reconciliation leaves both sides poorer. True victory came not when I proved my father wrong, but when we both found a way to be right together. For anyone watching this who recognizes the painful dynamics of family business, who has felt invisible or undervalued, I hope my story offers both inspiration and caution. Building your own success is powerful, but healing family wounds requires more than professional achievement. It demands honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to offer second chances, even when they seem undeserved. Have you experienced similar family business challenges? Comment below and share your story. Like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Thank you for witnessing my journey from rejection to reconciliation. And remember that the true measure of success is not what you build alone, but what you create together.